Hello everyone, welcome to my channel SW Metro official channel. Shock twist, the Brown family member least likely to blame Kody turns against him has to be one of the most unexpected developments in the ongoing saga of the Sister Wives universe, because for years fans have assumed that the fallout of Kody Brown's decisions, betrayals, and manipulations would come almost exclusively from the wives who left him, Christine with her bold independence, Janelle with her quiet resolve and focus on her kids, and Mary with her on-again, off-again battles over respect and loyalty, but never from the person who, by all accounts, had remained the most loyal, the most accommodating, the most unwavering in her public defense of him, Robyn Brown, the so-called favorite wife who for so long stood beside him when everyone else abandoned him, and that is what makes the twist so dramatic and deeply unsettling, not just for Kody himself, but for the dynamics of the entire family and the fan community that has been dissecting their every move for well over a decade. To understand why this turn of events has shocked viewers and rattled the very foundation of Kody's reality, one has to revisit the long history of Sister Wives, the original dream of a big, united polygamist family where each woman would have her place, the children would grow up together, and the patriarch would balance the needs of all, because in theory, Kody was supposed to be the rock, the guiding hand, the protector of the family's vision, but instead what emerged over the years was a picture of control, favoritism, and breakdown, with Kody increasingly withdrawing from some wives while clinging almost exclusively to Robyn, who he once called his soulmate, a word that cut deeply into the other women's hearts, reinforcing the perception that she was the chosen one, the woman he loved above the others, and the one he would never betray, which is why fans often assumed that no matter how bad things got, Robyn would never turn against him. But now, as reports and whispers spread through social media, interviews, and body language analysis from fans watching every new clip, the cracks are becoming visible, and it appears that Robyn herself may have finally reached a point where her loyalty is wavering, where she cannot ignore the reality of his treatment, his pride, his stubbornness, his inability to maintain relationships with his children, and his increasingly bitter rants against the women who once built their lives around him. And that is the true shock, because if Robyn, the last ally, the one who sacrificed the most to be with him, the one who endured the wrath of fans and the disdain of the other wives, if even she is beginning to point her finger and assign blame to him, then Kody truly has no one left, and the empire he built has collapsed from within. What makes this so fascinating is the subtle way it has unfolded, not in a single explosive confrontation but in small, telling moments that fans have pieced together like detectives, from her tears in recent confessionals that no longer feel like a defense of Kody but rather a lament for what she lost in choosing him, to the way she has stopped interjecting on his behalf when he rails against Christine or Janelle, to the instances where she acknowledges that maybe he could have done things differently, that perhaps he wasn't fair, that his pride got in the way, and these seemingly small admissions are seismic when viewed in the larger context. Because Robyn has always been the one to smooth things over, to say he was misunderstood, to suggest that his intentions were good even if the execution failed, but now she's allowing space for the idea that he might actually be at fault, and once that door opens, it's very difficult to close, because the truth is Kody has burned so many bridges, his children who feel abandoned, his wives who felt unloved, his fans who see through his excuses, that if Robyn no longer shields him, he's left completely exposed, and for a man who has built his entire identity on being the patriarch, the center of attention, the man in control, exposure equals ruin, humiliation, and the ultimate loss of power. Of course, this shift also raises questions about what finally pushed Robyn to this point. Was it the cumulative weight of his outbursts, the endless family drama, the fact that she too has been left in a miserable marriage where she is now the only wife and therefore gets the full brunt of his moods without the buffer of Sister Wives? Or was it the financial mess that selling Coyote Pass unleashed, a $1.5 million transaction that dissolved the dream of ever living together on shared land? Symbolizing the death of the vision that Robyn once bought into wholeheartedly, the vision that convinced her to join the family in the first place, believing in unity, in togetherness, in children playing on shared property while the wives supported each other, because if Kody couldn't preserve that dream and instead funneled everything into bitterness, favoritism, and isolation, then perhaps Robyn has come to realize that she was not chosen for love but for convenience, that she became the scapegoat as much as the shield, and that now she is left with a man who has nothing left to offer but blame, paranoia, and control. The twist becomes even more powerful when you think about how fans once speculated that if the show ended, Kody and Robyn would happily ride off into the sunset together, their monogamous marriage cemented by default, but instead, what we are witnessing is the implosion of even that bond, with Robyn appearing tired, lonely, and defeated in recent footage, no longer glowing with the energy of being the favored wife but instead carrying the weight of the entire family's collapse on her shoulders, and perhaps she has reached the stage of resentment, realizing that defending him has cost her her reputation, her friendships with the other wives, and even her relationship with his older children who see her as complicit in his favoritism, and if that resentment hardens into blame, then the very foundation of his remaining support system crumbles, leaving Kody isolated not just from his ex-wives and children but from the only partner who once saw him as her future. From a storytelling perspective, this is the ultimate poetic justice, because for years Robyn was cast as both the villain and the victim, the villain in the eyes of Christine, Janelle, and Mary, who saw her as the wedge that drove the family apart, and the victim in her own narrative, where she just wanted unity and was unfairly targeted for Kody's choices, and now, in turning against him, she reclaims some agency, rewriting herself as someone who no longer accepts his version of events, and that narrative shift is powerful, because it suggests that even the most loyal can wake up, even the most favored can grow disillusioned, and even the man who believed he was untouchable can lose the one person he always thought would stay by his side. What happens next is the question fans are now obsessing over. Will Robyn quietly pull away, making her criticisms subtle, or will there come a breaking point where she directly confronts him on camera, where she stops crying about lost dreams and starts demanding accountability? And if that moment comes, how will Kody react? Will he lash out, calling her ungrateful? Will he retreat further into his pride? Or will he finally, at long last, face the reality that he is the common denominator in all the failed relationships, that the patriarch who claimed to love equally could not manage to keep a single relationship healthy, and that his downfall is not because of disobedient wives, jealous exes, or rebellious children, but because of his own ego, his own insecurities, and his own inability to see beyond his need for control. The shock twist is not just that Robyn may be turning against him, but that her shift signals the end of the Brown family story as we've known it, because without her loyalty, without her complicity, there is no narrative left for Kody to spin, no defense left to cling to, no ally left to hold him up in the eyes of fans or producers, and that leaves sister wives at a crossroads. Does the show continue documenting the ruins of a man with no family left, or does it pivot fully to the stories of Christine, Janelle, and Mary, women who found lives outside of him, while Robyn herself begins to step out of his shadow, finally speaking the truths she once buried, and in doing so, becoming the final, ironic voice to confirm what fans have long suspected, that the real downfall of the Brown family wasn't jealousy, wasn't polygamy itself, wasn't the wives being disloyal, but was Kody Brown, and once even Robyn says it. The story is complete, the arc is finished, and the patriarch stands alone in the ruins of the dream he once so proudly built. Kody Brown, the flamboyant, hair-tossing patriarch, presiding over a complex web of relationships. Among them, one wife was consistently positioned as the unassailable pillar of devotion, the unwavering advocate for the principle if not always the practice of plural marriage, the steadfast, serene Janelle Brown. She was the family's pragmatic financial brain, its emotional anchor, the one who seemed to understand Kody's mercurial nature not as a flaw to be fought but as a force of nature to be navigated with calm efficiency. She was, by every conceivable metric, the family member least likely to blame. Her criticism was always measured, her loyalty to the family unit absolute. Which is why her seismic, methodical, and utterly decisive turn against Kody stands not merely as a shocking twist, but as the single most damning indictment of his leadership and the final, fatal collapse of the entire plural edifice he claimed to embody. Janelle's betrayal was so shocking precisely because it was so devoid of the theatricality that characterized other departures. Christine's was a triumphant, long-awaited declaration of independence, a euphoric "I'm done," shouted from the rooftops after years of vocalized starvation for affection. Mary's was a protracted, painful limbo of catfishing and lonely anniversary dinners, a slow-motion severing of a thread long since frayed to a single filament. Even Robin's allegiance, often painted as villainous, was a predictable outcome of blatant favoritism. But Janelle's? Janelle's was quiet. It was a series of cold, hard, rational calculations made in the silence of a rented RV and a barren plot of land on Coyote Pass. Her turn was not born from a desperate need for romantic love, which she never seemed to prioritize in the same way, but from a fundamental violation of her core values: fairness, logic, and financial and emotional equity. She wasn't just leaving a husband, she was dissolving a business partnership because the CEO had proven himself to be an irresponsible, irrational, and pathologically dishonest fiduciary. The seeds of this stunning reversal were sown not in a dramatic fight, but in the quiet neglect of her foundational needs. Janelle entered plural marriage not for grand romance, but for a practical, structured family life. She offered Kody unwavering loyalty, sharp business acumen that secured the family's financial footing for years, and a low-maintenance emotional style that gave him immense freedom. In return, she expected a basic level of respect, a fair distribution of resources, and a secure future for herself and her children. The unraveling began when Kody's definition of fair became irrevocably skewed by his obsession with Robin. Janelle watched, her pragmatic eyes missing nothing, as the family's collective assets were repeatedly leveraged for Robin's benefit: the extravagant, debt-encrusted McMansion purchased while she herself was relegated to a small apartment, the disproportionate allocation of time and money, the rewriting of family history to center Robin as the savior and the other wives as obstacles. Where Christine felt this as an emotional wound and Mary as a humiliation, Janelle recognized it first and foremost as a catastrophic financial and structural error. It was poor management. It was a bad investment. The COVID-19 pandemic acted as the great accelerant, exposing the rotting beams of the family structure with brutal clarity. Kody's draconian, ever-shifting rules were not just an inconvenience to Janelle, they were an illogical power play that severed her from her children and revealed a man governed by fear and control, not reason or faith. She saw her sons, the logical and independent young men she raised, branded as disloyal for questioning the nonsensical dictates of a father who hadn't prioritized their mother in years. The infamous "knife in the kidneys" speech, directed at Christine but witnessed by all, was likely the moment any lingering sentimental attachment Janelle had for Kody curdled into contempt. She saw a man so consumed by his own victimhood that he could publicly eviscerate the mother of his children for the crime of being unhappy. Janelle, the ultimate pragmatist, understands cause and effect. She saw the cause, Kody's neglect, and the effect, Christine's departure.